Deep in the cold emptiness of space, hidden inside a hollow moon called Varith Prime, there was a chamber that no map had ever shown. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to swallow light. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with colors that human eyes had never seen. This was the Nexus Chamber, the most secret place in the entire galaxy. Councilor Vexel arrived first. He was a creature with 6 eyes and gray skin that looked like wet leather. His species, the Varani, had been part of the Galactic Council for over 20,000 years. He remembered when the Council had only 50 member species. Now there were over 300. Managing them all had become increasingly difficult. The quantum portals began to shimmer as other delegates arrived. Ambassador Kreeth of the Mendari Empire slithered through, her serpentine body leaving a trail of bioluminescent slime on the ancient floor. Delegate Morax came next, his insectoid form clicking and buzzing with nervous energy. Then came others, dozens of them, representing the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known universe. Finally, High Arbiter Zelonis materialized at the center of the chamber. He was not made of flesh or metal, but of living crystal that had grown and evolved over millions of years. When he spoke, his voice resonated through every molecule of air in the room. "This is the 4,000th gathering of the Inner Council," Zelonis announced. "As always, this meeting does not officially exist. What we discuss here will never appear in any record. The younger species must never know." Every being in the chamber understood the weight of those words. The Galactic Council had 2 faces. The public face handled trade disputes, border conflicts, and cultural exchanges. But the Inner Council handled something far more sensitive. They managed the development of younger species, guiding them, shaping them, and when necessary, eliminating them. "We are here to discuss the human problem," Zelonis continued. "The situation has grown worse than any of our models predicted." Councilor Vexel stepped forward, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "The latest intelligence reports are deeply concerning. The humans have developed faster than light communication technology. Our projections showed they should not achieve this for another 300 years. They are accelerating. How is this possible?" asked a delegate from the Zinthri Collective, a species of telepathic gas beings. "We have been suppressing their development since their Stone Age," Ambassador Kreeth hissed with frustration. "That is exactly the problem. We have been suppressing them for 12,000 years, and it has not worked. Every time we slow them down, they find another way forward. They are like water finding cracks in a dam." Delegate Morax's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Perhaps we should review the original assessment. I have studied the records from when Earth was first catalogued. Our ancestors classified the humans as a Category 3 species, primitive mammals with limited potential. They were supposed to remain in their natural state, a curiosity for future study." "The assessment was wrong," Zelonis said. His crystalline form dimmed slightly, which among his kind was a sign of deep shame. "We made assumptions based on their biology. Small brains, short lifespans, fragile bodies. We did not account for their other qualities, their stubbornness," Vexal added. "Their creativity," Kreeth said. "Their spite," Morax finished. "They have a quality that our translation systems struggle to express. When faced with obstacles, they do not simply try to overcome them. They become personally offended by the obstacles. They will destroy themselves trying to prove that the universe cannot stop them." The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered this. Every species in the galaxy had evolved to survive, but survival usually meant caution, patience, and careful resource management. Humans were different. They took risks that no rational species would take. They explored places they did not need to explore. They built things they did not need to build. And somehow, impossibly, they kept succeeding, 12,000 light-years away. On a small human colony world called New Boston, a young woman named Katie Webb was working the night shift at a signals monitoring station. The station was small and unglamorous, just a collection of antenna dishes and computer equipment on a rocky hilltop. Katie's job was to watch for any unusual transmissions in their sector of space. It was boring work most nights. Katie spent her time drinking coffee, reading novels on her tablet, and occasionally checking the automated systems to make sure nothing had gone wrong. Her partner, Lieutenant Daniel Price, did the same thing at a desk 3 meters away. They rarely talked. After 6 months of working together, they had run out of things to say. But tonight was different. Katie noticed the anomaly at 0347 hours. Local time. A burst of data had appeared in the background noise, so brief that the automated filters had almost missed it. She pulled up the raw signal and studied it carefully. "Danny," she said, "come look at this." Daniel wheeled his chair over, coffee sloshing from his mug. He was a tall man with tired eyes and a permanent 5-day stubble. "What is it? Another glitch?" "I don't think so." Katie pointed at the patterns on her screen. "Look at the mathematical structure. This isn't random noise, and it isn't any encoding system I recognize. Not human, not Kalish, not Prioxy." Daniel leaned closer. His tired expression slowly changed to something sharper. "That's not from any known civilization. That's something new." "Or something old," Katie said quietly. "Something that's been hiding." They worked through the rest of the night, using every decryption tool available to them. The signal was fragmentary, just a tiny piece of a much larger transmission. But by dawn, they had decoded enough to make their blood run cold. The message contained coordinates. Hundreds of them. Every single one corresponded to a human colony, trade route, or military installation. And next to each coordinate was a string of alien symbols that their translation software could only partially interpret. "Containment failure," Katie read aloud. "Accelerated development. Termination protocols." Daniel sat back in his chair. His face had gone pale. "Someone is watching us. Someone has been watching us for a long time, and they have plans for us. We need to report this," Katie said. "Through official channels? Do we?" Daniel asked. "Think about it. If there is an alien civilization powerful enough to monitor all of humanity, powerful enough to have termination protocols ready, then who else might they be watching? Who else might already know about them?" Katie understood what he was saying. If there were traitors in human governments, if some officials had been compromised or were cooperating with these hidden watchers, then reporting through normal channels might be the worst possible choice. Their report could be buried. Or worse, they could be silenced. "Then what do we do?" she asked. Daniel thought for a long moment. "I know someone. Commander Grace Liu, Naval Intelligence. She was my instructor at the academy. She is the most honest person I have ever met, and she hates secrets. If anyone can help us figure out who to trust, it is her." Katie nodded slowly. "Then we find Commander Liu, and we pray that we are not already too late." Outside the monitoring station, the sun was rising over the rocky hills of New Boston. It was a beautiful morning, the kind that made people feel hopeful about the future. But Katie could not shake the feeling that everything had changed during the night. Humanity had always believed they were alone in deciding their own fate. Now she knew the truth. They had never been alone, and the beings watching them had never intended for humans to learn their secret. The Galactic Council had kept it secret for 12,000 years. Through careful planning and ruthless efficiency, every member species understood the rules. Young civilizations were to be monitored, guided, and when necessary, corrected. The galaxy was vast, but resources were limited. Only species that fit the proper pattern of development were allowed to join the greater community. Those that did not fit were handled quietly. High Arbiter Zelonis pulled up the historical records for the assembled delegates. Holographic images flickered to life, showing Earth at various stages of development. The first image showed the planet 65 million years ago, dominated by massive reptilian creatures. "The correction event," Zelonis narrated. "Our ancestors determined that the dominant reptiles were developing too quickly. They showed early signs of tool use and social organization. Left unchecked, they might have achieved space travel within 10 million years. The asteroid was redirected to eliminate them." "And the mammals that replaced them?" Counselor Thexall asked. "They were considered harmless. Small, timid creatures that hid from predators and ate insects. Our analysts predicted they would remain in that state indefinitely." Zelonis paused. "They were wrong. The holographic images advanced through time. Ice ages came and went. Strange apes began to walk upright on the African plains. They learned to use fire, to make tools, to speak. We implemented 17 correction events over the following millennia, Zalonis continued. Climate shifts, volcanic eruptions, disease outbreaks. Each time, we reduced their population and slowed their progress. Each time they recovered faster than we expected. Ambassador Cried slithered forward, her scales reflecting the holographic light. The problem is their breeding rate. Most intelligent. Species produce 1 or 2 offspring per generation. Humans can produce dozens. When we killed 90% of them during the Great Plague cycles, the survivors simply made more of themselves. It is more than breeding, Delegate Morax countered. It is their social structure. They form bonds with everything. Other humans, other species, even objects and ideas. When one group dies, others adopt their knowledge and continue their work. Killing individuals does not stop their progress. We would have to kill all of them simultaneously. Which brings us to the current discussion, Zalina said heavily. The intervention protocols. The chamber grew very quiet. Everyone knew what those words meant. Complete elimination of a species was rare, but not unprecedented. It had been done before 2 civilizations that posed existential threats to galactic stability. But it had never been done to a species as widespread as humanity. On Earth's moon, in a facility that appeared on no official maps, Commander Grace Liu was meeting with the oldest man she had ever known. Peter Walsh was 97 years old, kept alive by medical technology that most civilians did not know existed. He had been director of the United Nations Exarchaeology Division for 40 years. Before that, he had been a field agent. Before that, he had been one of the first humans to ever see proof that they were not alone in the universe. We found out in 1947, Peter explained. His voice was thin, but his mind was still sharp. Not from a crashed ship, despite what the conspiracy theorists believe. From a signal. Someone was broadcasting a warning to the rest of the galaxy, telling them to avoid our solar system. Grace sat in silence processing this information. Katie Webb and Daniel Price had brought her their decoded transmission 3 weeks ago. She had verified their findings, traced the signal patterns, and eventually discovered that a small group within the government had known the truth for decades. What did the warning say? She asked. It called us the unpredictable ones. Peter smiled, but there was no humor in it. The dangerous children. It warned other civilizations that we could not be controlled, could not be guided, could not be trusted. It recommended that any species encountering us should either avoid contact entirely or eliminate us before we spread. And you kept this secret for almost a century. What choice did we have? Peter leaned back in his chair. The medical equipment attached to his chest beeped quietly. In 1947, we had just finished fighting each other in the largest war in our history. We had nuclear weapons, but we were decades away from space travel. If we had revealed that powerful aliens existed and wanted us dead, it would have caused panic. Governments would have fallen. Societies would have collapsed. We would have done their job for them. Grace understood the logic, even if she hated it. But things are different now. Now we have 47 colony worlds. We have a real navy, not just defense satellites. We have allies who chose to work with us despite the warnings they received. Peter reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. And now we have this. Grace opened the folder. Inside were documents she had never seen before. Archaeological reports from ancient sites on Earth and Mars. Analysis of artifacts that should not exist. Evidence of alien intervention in human development going back thousands of years. The pyramids? She asked, recognizing some of the sites. No, those were genuinely human. We built them ourselves, which apparently terrified the Council even more than if we had found alien technology. But there are other structures, other objects that we did not build. Monitoring devices, guidance systems. Things that were meant to slow us down and keep us manageable. Grace looked at the evidence of manipulation. The ice ages that had killed millions. The plagues that had nearly driven humanity to extinction. the wars that had been subtly encouraged by outside influences. 12,000 years of suffering, all to keep one species from reaching its potential. They were afraid of us, she said slowly, from the very beginning. And they were right to be, Peter replied. Look at what we have accomplished, despite their interference. Look at what we might have accomplished if they had left us alone. He coughed, his old lungs struggling. But now comes the real question. What do we do with this knowledge? Grace thought about Katie and Daniel, waiting for her guidance. She thought about the transmission they had intercepted, the termination protocols that someone in the galaxy was preparing. She thought about her own children and grandchildren, living their lives on colony worlds that might be targeted for destruction. We tell people, she said finally. Not everything, not all at once. But we start preparing humanity for the truth. Because if war is coming, they deserve to know what they are fighting for. Peter nodded slowly. I have been waiting decades for someone to say that. I was beginning to think I would die before humanity was ready, smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. It seems I might get to see how this story ends after all. In the Nexus chamber, the debate over the intervention protocols continued. Ambassador Krythe argued for immediate action. Counselor Thexal urged caution. Delegate Morax presented data showing that even a coordinated attack might not succeed, given how quickly humans were spreading through the galaxy. But it was. High Arbiter Zelonis, who spoke the words that silenced everyone. We have spent 12,000 years trying to stop them, he said. We have failed. We have spent centuries trying to isolate them from potential allies. We have failed. We have used every tool in our possession, and still they grow stronger. His crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. Perhaps the time has come to consider a different approach. What approach? Krythe demanded. Surrender. Communication, Zelonis replied. Perhaps it is time to stop treating them as a problem to be managed and start treating them as what they clearly are, a species that will not be stopped. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates supported Zelonis. Others called him a traitor. The debate would continue for days, weeks, months. But somewhere in the back of his ancient mind, Zelonis knew that the decision had already been made, not by the Council, but by humanity itself. They were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had now stretched into its 5th day. Delegates had stopped returning to their quarters. Food and rest had become secondary concerns. The future of the galaxy was being decided. No one wanted to miss a moment. Counselor Thexal stood before a massive holographic display showing the current distribution of human settlements. Red dots marked their colony worlds, spreading outward from Earth like a disease. Blue lines showed their trade routes, connecting them to the Kalish and Preoxy civilizations. Yellow circles indicated their military presence, concentrated around strategic choke points in space. The expansion rate is accelerating, Thexal reported. 50 years ago, they had 12 colony worlds. 20 years ago, they had 30. Now they have 47. Our projections suggest they will exceed 100 within the next decade. And their military capability? Ambassador Krythe asked. Growing at a proportional rate. They have standardized their ship designs, which allows for faster production. They have shared defensive technology with the Kalish and Preoxy, which means attacking one species would effectively mean attacking all 3. Thexal paused. In short, the window for effective intervention is closing rapidly. Delegate Morax stepped forward, his insectoid eyes scanning the data streams. There may be another option. The humans have a weakness that we have not fully exploited. They are tribal by nature. They divide themselves into nations, religions, political factions. If we could amplify these divisions, encourage them to fight among themselves, we might achieve through internal conflict what we cannot achieve through external force. We have tried that before, High Arbiter, Zelonis reminded him. During their 20th century, we provided resources to opposing factions, encouraged territorial disputes, amplified their natural suspicions. The result was that they developed nuclear weapons and began cooperating more closely to prevent their own extinction. Then we try harder, Kryth insisted. Find deeper divisions. Exploit older hatreds. You do not understand them, Zelena said. His voice carried a weight of exhaustion. I have studied humanity for 3,000 years. They fight among themselves constantly. They argue about everything. They hold grudges for generations. But when threatened from outside, all of that disappears. They become one species, one family, united against the common enemy. The more we push them, the stronger they become together. On New Boston, Katie Webb was reviewing the network of contacts she had built over the past 3 months. What had started as a simple question of who to trust had evolved into something much larger. She had found allies in unexpected places. Military officers who had noticed strange gaps in their intelligence reports. Scientists whose research had been classified without explanation. Politicians who had been asking uncomfortable questions for years. Commander. Grace Liu had been instrumental in building this network. Her reputation opened doors that would have been closed to Katie and Daniel. And Peter Walsh, despite his age and declining health, had provided historical context that made sense of everything they were discovering. The pattern is clear, Katie explained during their latest secure meeting. The group had gathered in an abandoned mining facility on one of New Boston's moons, far from any surveillance systems. For at least 70 years, certain information has been systematically hidden from the public. Archaeological discoveries that suggest alien intervention in human history. CTI data that indicates advanced civilizations are watching us. Military encounters that were classified at the highest levels. But why hide it? Asked Senator Rachel Grant, one of the politicians who had joined their cause. If aliens exist, if they are a threat, why not tell people so we can prepare? Because someone believed that knowledge would cause panic, Grace answered. And for a long time, they were probably right. But we have reached a point where the secrets are more dangerous than the truth. Daniel Price pulled up the decoded transmission that had started everything. The termination protocols are real. The Council, whatever it is, has been debating whether to eliminate humanity for months. The only reason they have not acted is because they are afraid of what will happen if they try and fail. Then we use that fear, said Admiral Stephen Ross, a retired fleet commander who had spent his career wondering why certain sectors of space were designated as off-limits. We show them that their fears are justified. We make it clear that any attack on humanity will be met with a response so devastating that no rational civilization would risk it. That is part of the plan, Katie agreed. But it is not enough. If we only threaten them, we remain enemies forever. We need to change the relationship entirely. How? Rachel asked Dot. Katie looked around the room at the faces of people who had risked everything to be here. Politicians, soldiers, scientists, intelligence officers. They represented the best of humanity, not because they were powerful, but because they cared enough to act. We tell everyone the truth, she said. We broadcast everything we know to every human in existence. We let them decide how to respond. And then we approach the Council not as supplicants, not as threats, but as equals. We demand our place at the table. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some argued it was too risky. Others said it was too soon. Admiral Ross worried about military readiness. Senator Grant worried about political fallout. Everyone had concerns, but in the end, they reached consensus. The secret had been kept for too long. The time for hiding was over, in the Nexus chamber. High Arbiter Zelonis received a private communication from a source he had cultivated over centuries. The message was brief, but devastating. The humans know. They are preparing to reveal everything. Zelonis did not share this information with the other delegates. Not yet. He needed time to think, to consider the implications. For 12,000 years, the Council had operated on the assumption that knowledge was power, and that controlling knowledge meant controlling outcomes. They had hidden their existence from younger species, manipulated events from the shadows, and eliminated threats before they could grow to large. But humans were different. They did not respond to fear the way other species did. When they discovered a threat, they did not hide from it or submit to it. They studied it. They challenged it. They found ways to overcome it. What would happen when billions of humans learned that their entire history had been manipulated by alien powers? Would they panic and destroy themselves, as the Council had always hoped? Or would they do what they always did when faced with impossible odds? Zalinus feared he already knew the answer. We should have left them alone, he murmured to himself. We should have let them develop naturally and found a way to coexist. But we were afraid, and our fear created the very enemy we sought to prevent. The other delegates continued their debates, unaware that the decision had already been taken out of their hands. Somewhere in human space, a young intelligence analyst and her allies were preparing to change the course of galactic history. The secret meeting of the Galactic Council was about to become a lot less secret, and humans were about to learn everything. They were never intended to know. The broadcast began at exactly midnight, Universal Standard Time. Katie Webb had chosen the timing deliberately. On some worlds it would be morning, on others evening, but everywhere it would be a moment when people were awake and alert. The message needed to reach everyone at once, before anyone could stop it. They had spent months preparing. The network of allies had grown to include communications experts who knew how to bypass security systems, engineers who understood the architecture of humanity's information networks, and hackers who had developed tools for exactly this kind of operation. When the signal went out, it went everywhere simultaneously. Every television, every radio, every computer, every personal device across 47 colony worlds. Katie's face appeared on screens across human civilization. She looked tired, but determined. Behind her, Daniel Price monitored the transmission equipment, making sure the signal remained strong. "My name is Katie Webb," she began. "I am an intelligence analyst from New Boston. What I am about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about human history. It will be difficult to hear. It will make you angry. But it is the truth, and you deserve to know it." She spoke for 17 minutes. She explained the Galactic Council, the 12,000 years of manipulation, the extinction events that had been artificially caused. She showed evidence, the decoded transmissions, the archaeological reports, the classified documents that Peter Walsh had preserved. She named the species involved, described their capabilities, and revealed the termination protocols that were being considered. "They have been afraid of us since the beginning," Katie concluded. "They have tried to slow us down, divide us, destroy us, and they have failed. Now we have a choice. We can let fear control us, turn against each other, and prove that they were right about us, or we can show them who we really are." The broadcast ended. For a long moment, there was silence across human space. Then the reaction began. On Earth, crowds gathered in city squares, watching the news coverage on massive public screens. On Mars, workers stopped their shifts and clustered around any device that could show them information. On the outer colonies, families sat together in their homes, trying to process what they had just learned. The Galactic Council watched these events unfold through their network of surveillance devices. They expected chaos. They expected riots, government collapses, military coups. They expected humanity to tear itself apart as the truth destroyed the foundations of their civilization. That was not what happened. There was anger. Yes, there were demonstrations outside government buildings as people demanded explanations for decades of secrecy. There were harsh words spoken and accusations made. But beneath the anger was something the Council had never anticipated: unity. Within 6 hours, United Nations Security Council had convened an emergency session. Representatives from every member nation appeared, including leaders from the colony worlds. The session was broadcast publicly, a deliberate choice to show that the era of secrets was over. "We face a decision that will define our species for generations," Secretary General Maria Santos declared. "We can respond to this revelation with fear and division, which is exactly what the Council expected. Or we can respond with strength and solidarity." The debate was fierce but brief. By the end of the session, a unanimous resolution had passed. All human military forces would be unified under a single command structure. All colonies would contribute resources to a common defense fund. All research into advanced technology would be shared openly across human civilization within 48 hours. The Kalash and Proxy ambassadors had made their own announcements. Ambassador Vela of the Kalash appeared on every human news network, her delicate features calm and serious. "We were warned about humanity centuries ago," she said. "The Council told us you were dangerous, unpredictable, violent. They were right about one thing. You are unpredictable. But they were wrong about what that means. You surprised us with your kindness, your generosity, your willingness to share technology and knowledge without demanding anything in return. When you could have exploited us, you chose partnership instead. Whatever comes next, the Kalash stand with humanity." The Proxy ambassador, a towering being made of living stone, delivered a similar message. "Strength alone does not earn loyalty. Character earns loyalty. Humanity has shown its character through its actions, not its words. We will not abandon our friends because ancient powers are afraid of them." In the Nexus Chamber, the response to these developments was something approaching panic. "Three species," Ambassador Krythe hissed. "Three species united against us. And more will follow. The younger civilizations have always resented our guidance. Now they have an example to follow." Counselor Thixal had been studying the human response with all 6 of his eyes. "There is something wrong with our models," he said slowly. "We predicted that revealing the truth would cause their civilization to collapse. Instead, they have become stronger. How is this possible?" "Because our models were based on fear," High Arbiter Zelonis answered. "We assumed that knowledge of a superior threat would cause terror and paralysis. That is how our species would have responded. But humans are not like us. They do not freeze when they discover a predator. They organize. They prepare. They fight." "Then we must act now," Krythe insisted, "before they become any stronger." "The intervention protocols will fail," Zelonis interrupted. "I have run the calculations. Even if we launched a coordinated attack with every weapon at our disposal, we could not eliminate them completely. Some would survive, and those survivors would spend every moment of their existence seeking revenge. They would never stop. They would hunt us across the galaxy, across millennia, until either they were truly extinct or we were." "Then what do you suggest?" Delegate Morax demanded. "We simply surrender. Accept that these primitives will eventually dominate us all." Zelonis was silent for a long moment. His crystalline form flickered with colors that represented deep thought. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but carried through the entire chamber. "I suggest we consider something unprecedented. I suggest we approach them openly, acknowledge what we have done, and ask for their forgiveness. I suggest we offer them what they have always wanted: equality." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates called Zelonis a coward. Others accused him of betraying everything the council stood for. But a few, a small but growing number, began to consider that he might be right. On New Boston, Katie Webb was watching the news coverage of the human response. Daniel sat beside her, equally amazed by what they were seeing. "We did it," Daniel said. "We actually did it," Katie shook her head. "We started it. The hard part is still coming." She pointed at the screen where military commanders were discussing defense preparations. "Right now, everyone is united because they are scared and angry. But fear and anger fade. If we want this unity to last, we need something more."
"Like what?"
"Like a future worth fighting for. Not just survival, but something better. A galaxy where humans are not just tolerated but respected. Where our children can explore and discover without someone trying to hold them back." Katie smiled tiredly. "The Council spent 12,000 years trying to suppress us. Now we have the chance to show them what we can really do when nobody is standing in our way." Outside, the stars were shining through New Boston's thin atmosphere. The same stars that had guided human dreams since the beginning of their species. Now those dreams were within reach. The secret was out. The truth was known. And humanity was just getting started. The human fleet arrived at Varith Prime 3 months after the broadcast. 17,000 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Surrounding the hollow moon that housed the Galactic Council's most secret chamber, the ships represented every colony world, every major faction, every branch of the unified military. Kalash and Prioxy vessels flew alongside them. Smaller in number, but equal in determination. Admiral Christina Blake commanded the fleet from the bridge of the flagship Unity. She was 61 years old. With gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles, she had spent her entire career defending humanity against threats both real and imagined. Now she faced the greatest threat of all, and she had only one weapon that truly mattered: patience. All ships hold position, she ordered. Weapons remain cold. No one fires unless I give the direct order. The fleet waited. The hollow moon waited. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Inside the Nexus chamber, the delegates had been watching the human fleet assemble with mounting terror. Some had already fled through quantum portals, unwilling to face what was coming. Others remained, either too proud to run or too curious to leave. High Arbiter Zelonis stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form glowing with a steady light. He had argued for weeks that this moment would come, that the Council's only hope lay in choosing dialogue over conflict. Now the time had come to see if he was right. "They are not firing," Counselor Thexel observed, all 6 eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Their weapons are powered down. This is not an attack formation. It is a demonstration," Ambassador Krythe replied. Her serpentine body was coiled tight with tension. "They want us to see their strength before they make demands," perhaps Zelonis said. "Or perhaps they are offering us a choice." A communication signal arrived at that moment. Admiral Blake's image appeared in the chamber, projected large enough for every delegate to see clearly. Her expression was calm, but firm. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," she began. "I am Admiral Christina Blake of the United Human Fleet. We know you are in there. We know what you have done. We know about the 12,000 years of manipulation, the artificial extinctions, the termination protocols." She paused, letting those words settle. "We are not here for revenge. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to talk." Silence followed. None of the delegates knew how to respond. In 50,000 years of Council history, no younger species had ever confronted them directly. The protocols did not exist for this situation. Zelonis spoke first. "Admiral Blake, this is High Arbiter Zelonis. I speak for those who wish to find a peaceful resolution. What do you want?" "3 things," Admiral Blake replied. "First, we want answers. Complete access to all Council records concerning human development. No more secrets, no more lies. Second, we want acknowledgement. A public statement accepting responsibility for what was done to our species. Third, we want membership. Not as subordinates, not as a species to be managed, but as full and equal partners in galactic governance." The chamber erupted in protests. Several delegates declared these demands impossible, an insult to everything the Council represented. Krythe argued that equality could never be granted to such a young and dangerous species. Others suggested that this was merely a prelude to attack, that the humans were buying time while they positioned their weapons. But Zelonis raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "And if we refuse?" Admiral Blake's expression did not change. "Then you will discover what humanity is capable of when we have nothing left to lose. We will not start this fight, High Arbiter. But if you force us to finish it, we will not stop until one of us no longer exists. That is not a threat. It is simply who we are." Katie Webb was watching this exchange from a monitor room aboard one of the smaller vessels in the fleet. Daniel Price sat beside her, along with Commander Grace Liu and the elderly Peter Walsh, who had insisted on being present despite his failing health. "She is doing well," Peter commented, watching Admiral Blake negotiate. "Firm, but not aggressive. Demanding, but not threatening. Do you think they will accept?" Katie asked. Peter considered the question. "I think they have no choice. Everything they tried against us has failed. They can continue fighting a war they cannot win, or they can adapt to a new reality." He smiled weakly. "Civilizations are like organisms. The ones that survive are the ones that learn to change." The negotiations continued for 3 days. Delegates argued, threatened, pleaded. Some refused to participate at all, retreating to their ships and preparing for the war they still believed was inevitable. But slowly, painfully, a consensus began to emerge. The final agreement was signed in the Nexus chamber itself. Admiral Blake walked through the ancient halls, accompanied by Katie, Daniel, Grace, and Peter. They were the first humans to ever set foot in this place. The first to see the symbols and structures that had shaped galactic civilization for millennia. The document was simple in language, but revolutionary in meaning. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. All records of manipulation would be declassified and released. A joint commission would be established to review all ongoing operations against developing species. With the goal of ending the practice of interference entirely, High Arbiter Zelonis signed first, his crystalline appendage leaving a glowing mark on the quantum-encoded document. Admiral Blake signed second, using a stylus that seemed almost primitive by comparison. "This is not the end," Zelonis said quietly as the ceremony concluded. "Many in the Council will never accept this agreement. There will be challenges, betrayals, attempts to return to the old ways." "We know," Admiral Blake replied. "We're used to fighting for everything we have. One more struggle does not frighten us." "No," Zelonis agreed. "I suppose it does not." Paused. And when he spoke again, there was something almost like respect in his resonant voice. "We spent 12,000 years trying to understand what made your species so difficult to control. I think I finally have an answer." "What is it?" "You do not accept limits. When someone tells you that something is impossible, you treat it as a personal challenge. When you face obstacles, you do not look for ways around them. You look for ways through them. And when you are told that you are not worthy of something, you prove your worth through action rather than argument." Admiral Blake smiled slightly. "We call that stubbornness. Call it terrifying," Zelonis replied. "But perhaps that is not entirely a bad thing. The galaxy has grown comfortable in its patterns. Perhaps it needs a species that refuses to follow the expected path." Outside the Nexus chamber, the human fleet remained in position. Soldiers and civilians watched the news feeds, waiting for word of what had been decided. When the announcement came, when they learned that humanity had been accepted as equals in the galactic community, the celebrations began. Katie Webb stood on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Daniel joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee that he had somehow found on an alien moon. "You know, this is just the beginning," Katie said, accepting the cup. "There will be problems. Old grudges, new conflicts, species that refuse to accept us." "I know," Daniel agreed. "But that is the thing about beginnings. They mean that the story is not over yet." Peter Walsh had found a seat near a viewport, watching the celebrations with tired but satisfied eyes. Grace Leo stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "I never thought I would see this day," Peter admitted. "When I first learned the truth, I was terrified. I thought the knowledge would destroy us. Instead, it set us free." "Secrets always do, eventually," Grace replied. "The question is whether you free yourself or let someone else do it for you." The stars continued to burn, indifferent to the struggles of the beings who lived among them. But those beings were no longer alone in the darkness. They had found each other across species and across centuries of mistrust. They had chosen cooperation over fear, unity over division, hope over despair. The Galactic Council had kept its secret for 12,000 years. They had believed that knowledge was power, that controlling knowledge meant controlling destiny. They had been wrong. The real power had always belonged to those who refused to be controlled, to those who asked questions when they were told to remain silent, to those who reached for the stars even when the universe itself seemed to push them back. Humans were never intended to learn the truth. But they had learned it anyway, and now, finally, they were free to write their own story.